If Iowa State were completely healthy, they'd be undefeated. I don't care. You can't convince me otherwise. Unfortunately, they are pretty injury riddled.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, Cyclone fans. Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Nick Marvitz. Thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we are talking first injury news. Matt Campbell, Taylor Mauser got on the mic yesterday, had some interesting things to say, but Matt Campbell specifically made some announcements in the injury department that I want to talk about first. Then, in the second segment, there's a lot going on with this Arizona State game. We got to have a first look. What is Iowa State dealing with in their matchup with Arizona State? We'll talk about that. And then finally, to round out today's show, we are going to talk about the end goal of this season. Matt Campbell was asked about it. I've personally talked about it a little bit, but there is some discourse about the answer that Matt Campbell gave, and I want to give my opinion on that. So stick around because that'll be a lot of fun. Very interesting answer from Matt Campbell. Can't wait to dive into all that. But first, we do need to talk about the injury situation Iowa State is now facing, because it's not great. I'm not going to lie to you. Matt Campbell dropped this kind of out of nowhere. Was asked about it, of course, but the way he phrased it just kind of caught me off guard. Khijohnn Cummings-Coleman is out for the season. Matt Campbell has announced. Now, not ideal, but I will throw this out there really quickly. Cummings-Coleman has not played since the Arizona game in which he was hurt. So there won't be a huge difference from the BYU to the Arizona State game. This is not necessarily game-changing from last week to next week, even from Colorado to BYU, however you want to look at it. It's been a while since Cummings-Coleman has played. That being said, the first thing that comes to my mind is what is happening that these players are getting this hurt this often, and specifically this much at a single position. We saw this a little bit last season with the linebackers, and that obviously hurt, but it didn't hurt them enough to take them out of, the Big 12 championship, to take them away from a 10-win season, 11-win season, first time in program history. This season, this has certainly derailed the entire year. The way that they lost Coop, the way they lost Jontez, the way that they lost now Cummings-Coleman, this secondary has been, the best word is decimated. They have been completely blown up beyond repair. I will be interested to see if they can turn it around, because the last 3 games, it just hasn't looked good. Obviously, the secondary, not the only problem that Iowa State is facing, but certainly a big one. And I wanted to throw this out there. Obviously, the question is, why is this happening? What is it deeper than just like freak accident injuries? What's the practice schedule look like? What does strength and conditioning look like? All valid questions. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer for you. I just want to throw that out there into the universe. The question is why, and sometimes there is no answer. Sometimes it truly is an accident, just something that's unavoidable. But sometimes it comes down to, they're overworked. When you're more fatigued, you're more likely to sustain an injury because your form is not as clean, something I learned in college. Obviously doesn't completely apply from the RDL to playing football, but the principle is still there. Is it something that's obviously there were some injuries sustained in practice. Is it the practice style? All of those are valid questions. I just don't have the answer to those. Unfortunately, I can't give you the answer to those. But I do want to do a little bit of a thought experiment with you, because it's interesting the way that this has played out at one position group. I was doing some thinking, and if Iowa State were to theoretically, this is all completely hypothetical, but to sustain an injury at the top of a bunch of different positions, right? So you take out your top wide receiver, or you lose your top wide receiver, your top offensive lineman, your top tight end, your top running back. Would they be better off? Or you could even do it across the defense, right? We're best defensive lineman, best linebacker, best safety, best corner. Would they be better off than if they were to sustain them all in one specific position? Because the way that the secondary has been impacted specifically has been, it's been super obvious, right? It's brutal. And the reason I bring that up is because this next man up mentality, this next man up idea, in my opinion, it's not that it only works, but it works significantly better if the next man up actually has the opportunity to stay fresh, to stay like I would say clean because that's what the first word that comes to my mind when I think of fresh, but to stay rested, right? The way that Iowa State has lost so many secondary members, you are now forced, as Jon Heacock talked about, to play guys more snaps, not only than they were used to, but even more so than the starters were playing when they had the full room ready to go. You go from playing 10, 20 snaps to 70 snaps. Previously, the starters were playing, 50 snaps? You're asking so ridiculously much more of these guys who weren't even starters to start the season. I personally wonder if losing, a couple different guys across the top of a different position groups, how that would impact the team as opposed to losing both the Jim Thorpe, preseason watch list award guys and another starter. Like that's deep. That's a lot of loss at one singular position. Specifically, as far as that secondary position goes, who's going to step in for Iowa State? Like I said, not going to be a lot of change from BYU to Arizona State, as Khijohnn Cummings-Coleman has not played since Arizona. But it is worth noting that right now it's probably going to be, like we've seen Quentin Taylor, David Coffey, Trey Bell, Benny Ngoye out there at corner. Marcus Neal, Drew Sturge is going to be out there as well. Jameson Patton kind of been holding down with Marcus Neal, but holding down this secondary unit. Like I said, not going to see a ton of change from BYU or Colorado or Cincinnati to Arizona State. But it is worth keeping in mind that now there isn't really the element of he could come back. Now he's been ruled out for the season. Good season. Can't wait for next season. Speedy recovery, honestly, to everybody who's hurt on Iowa State's roster, because there's a lot. It would take forever to go out and name every single one of them. I don't love that this is the situation we're in. But that's the reality we're in. We have to look at it as next man up and hope that we have enough depth to keep guys fresh. Now, I do have some good news for you. A little bit surprising at this point, I know. But in other news, Matt Campbell says that Jace Gilbert has a real shot to play on Saturday. Now, what does this mean? Really quickly, we'll pump this one in here. Obviously, it feels good to get a kicker back. I talked about it on Twitter at Nick_Marv when Kyle Conrarty was back in the game against BYU. Feels nice to not necessarily be so worried. Once you cross the 50, there's not like huge question marks of what's going to happen with this offense. Are they going to go for it? Are they going to punt it away? What's the line they need to get to attempt the field goal? Now you just have like that sense of security with Kyle Conrarty in. Kind of the same thing here with Jace Gilbert. You now have a sense of security on kickoffs that there is going to be relatively decent field position for the defense to deal with, right? It's not going to be brought out to the 30, 35, 40 as much as it's going to be a kickoff. So that is nice to know. If Gilbert is going to come back, obviously we take all of Matt Campbell's injury comments with a grain of salt, because he can throw you both ways. Yeah, he's going to play. He doesn't play. He's not looking great. He's doubtful. He does play a lot. Like, it's not hard to really gauge where these players are going to be at in 4 days from now. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I guess technically, what is that? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 days. But definitely worth at least thinking about the fact that if Jace Gilbert comes back, I think Iowa State gets a little bit better, gives the defense a little bit more room, forces the opposing offense to go a little bit further, makes them approach the drive differently. And that is, I think, a good, that will help this team. And I think if you ask them, they would take all the help that they can get. Now, specifically on Arizona State, there is some interesting wrinkles we need to talk about. We'll do that coming up right here after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. And from footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. Iowa State facing off against Arizona State this upcoming weekend was thought to be maybe one of the best games of the season. Obviously, the Big 12 championship rematch, but I don't think it's going to be quite on that level. We got a lot to talk about in this segment. We'll talk about Arizona State as a whole, but I think the first thing that we should talk about is because it's kind of like news, right? It doesn't sound like Sam Leavitt is going to play. Now, as I said with Matt Campbell, take it with a grain of salt. Who knows? But he has been ruled out at this point. What does that mean? We're probably going to see Jeff Sims. Okay. Jeff Sims is a good quarterback. Don't let that get twisted. Don't think that because Sam Leavitt isn't in, Iowa State's got the win. Okay. That is not the case. I went back and took a look at Jeff Sims and his playing history because we haven't actually really gotten a whole lot of a chance to talk about it, or at least I haven't here on this channel. He's played for, he was a freshman when I was a freshman, which is crazy to think about. How do these guys still have eligibility? A great question. Good for them. Good for them. And I hope everyone can play for as long as they possibly want to. It's not what I'm saying, but I am just like shocked by that. So played at Georgia Tech first back in 2020, was a freshman, played a ton of football at Georgia Tech. And then if you go back to 2023 is where I've got him, switches or transfers over to Nebraska, plays a few games there. And then in 2024, transfers to Arizona State. We did actually see him last season in the Big 12 championship game, had 6 carries for 31 yards, an average of 5.2, along of 12. Those were his stat lines against us, the Iowa State Cyclones, last season. I suppose it wasn't technically us. I wasn't wearing football pads, for those of you who get bent out of shape about that. Did play in a few other games, though, against Utah, Cincinnati, Wyoming. This season, he has played a few times already. Played against Texas State, major win, or big-time win, I suppose, for Arizona State, 34-15. Played in the loss to Utah. Now, that was a game that a lot of people looked at because no Sam Leavitt meant, how do you judge this Arizona State team? Went 18-38 for 124 yards, a 47% completion rate, rushed 21 times for 66 yards in that game. Then was in a handful of plays or whatever against Texas Tech, 2 carries for 3 yards. And then stepped in late against Houston as well. In that late step in, went 6 of 11 for 58 yards, a 54% completion, and rushed 3 times for 11 yards. Now, am I saying that Jeff Sims is better than than Sam Leavitt? No, I'm not necessarily saying that, because obviously he's not the starter, right? And I don't think that's rude to say. That's just a fact. But it is worth mentioning that he can still play football. He is still good at playing football. It's a different challenge that Iowa State is preparing for in Jeff Sims, but it is a challenge nonetheless, and Iowa State needs to be ready. You don't want to be exposed. It's just that simple. It's not necessarily about being exposed by any particular guy. You don't want to be exposed, period. You better prepare, because Jeff Sims is going to be ready to come and get you. I mean, he really is. Now, as far as specifically Arizona, or I guess generally Arizona State, they are also 5-3. They are 3-2 in the Big 12, though. Remember, they took their loss, or their third loss. I guess it wasn't chronological. It was technically their first loss to Mississippi State. They lost outside of conference. Iowa State perfect outside the conference. Arizona State lost to Mississippi State. Crazy game if you look back on that one. And then there was the conversation of maybe Arizona State is back after their wins to Baylor and TCU. That was when I thought TCU was maybe better than they are. They were ranked 24th at the time. 2 27-24 wins back-to-back had me thinking they might be all right. Lost to Utah. It was easy to write off. No Sam Leavitt. Then they beat Texas Tech. I think that was the moment where I thought maybe Arizona State is really good. Like, maybe they are going to be a major problem when looking at the rest of Iowa State's schedule. And then they take the loss to Houston, 24-16. Now, this is a totally different conversation, but how good is Houston, right? Houston, certainly a team that I think has a good shot at making the Big 12 championship game. We talked about that on the squad show. I've talked about that here. I've talked about it on previous squad shows, partially because of their schedule, but also because, I mean, they are a good team. They've only taken their loss to Texas Tech, and they'll face West Virginia, UCF, TCU, Baylor the rest of the season. I'm not going to say that they can't miss it, but they have a really good shot. They have a favorable schedule, to say the least. I like where Houston's at, but nonetheless, they got their big win over 24th ranked Arizona State. And now Arizona State sits at 5-3, 5th in the Big 12. Iowa State in their way. And now are they, fighting for the Big 12 title game? No, probably not. I don't think that they necessarily are. I think their season in that fashion is over as well. And we'll obviously talk about Iowa State. That's the whole third segment of today's show, excuse me. But Arizona State isn't going to come in and roll over, right? Iowa State's going to have to play well in this game. Now that's like the most generic, analysis that you can possibly give. Obviously, you're going to have to play well to win these games. But I do think on some level, there's a confusion, a level of confusion with what is Arizona State this season. I started it off, I think I ranked them number 1 in the Locked On poll. And that's where they fell. I'll throw it up on screen if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not, it's completely free. I've got the preseason poll up here from the Big 12 conference from the Locked On network. And Arizona State came in at number 1. Everyone, obviously coming off the national championship, the amount they were returning, no Scadaboo, but a lot of guys returning. This is going to be a problem. This team's going to be a problem in the Big 12 this season. And then they lose to Mississippi State, but then they're good, but then they lose again. So where are they actually at? I don't think it matters. And I think that every coach at Iowa State would agree. Iowa State just at this point is tasked with going out and playing their best football, right? Having the young guys learn as much as they possibly can, getting as many wins, putting this program back on track so they don't see a multi-year setback. And it really starts here. It doesn't necessarily end here. You've got a lot of games left, but it does start here. You need to grab this one if you're Iowa State. Now, no Sam Leavitt. It will be probably Jeff Sims. Very interesting situation there. How will that play out? We'll see. As far as rushes go, they do have a couple threats, mostly Raleek Brown. But other than that, Sam Leavitt was going to be a guy. Jeff Sims going to be a guy that probably will break outside the pocket every now and then. Receivers, Jordan Tyson. We know that name very well. Luckily did not play against us last season, but so far this season, he's got 57 receptions, 628 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Having a super good year. Did not play against Houston, though. I'll be interested to see how specifically this plays out. But this is one that, to me, felt like, at least at this point, Iowa State's season is in a weird spot, right? You've lost your last 3. You start 5-0. If you only look at the last 3 weeks, Iowa State is 0-3. Very different vibe. Arizona State has been so up and down, obviously, as I just laid out. It's tough to really put a finger on what this game means to either team. And I think that this is kind of a self-defining game for both of these teams. That's how I'm looking at this. I think this is an opportunity for Iowa State to right their ship. I think this is an opportunity for Arizona State to come into a hostile environment and to see what they're capable of, obviously without a Sam Leavitt, right? I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. We'll do a deeper dive later in the week as well, but this is an important game for Iowa State specifically to avoid this season getting out of control. You can't let this season get much worse than it is right now, in my opinion, because the end goal has been lost, but it is not over. It's far from over. Because it's far from over, what is the end goal? How do you get week to week? Well, Matt Campbell had an interesting answer to that. We'll talk about that coming up right here after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. Emphasis on the safer. The swivel screen is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. And obviously, using that time efficiently is very important. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. So Iowa State not probably fighting for a Big 12 title. I know, not ideal, but it's kind of what Iowa State has been known for up until last season, right? I guess not last season, the last few years. Definitely Matt Campbell has turned this program around. But there was an element before that where we were happy to be in a bowl game. Iowa State still not technically bowl eligible. I bring that up because Iowa State probably not fighting for this Big 12 championship. What is the goal? I would imagine the goal is more than just to become, bowl eligible, to go out and win some bowl game, whatever it is. I would imagine it's more than that. And Matt Campbell didn't really answer. I was kind of not super in love with this, and neither was anyone else, or at least from what I've seen online. His answer to what kind of is the goal, or what kind of keeps this team, program moving forward. He said, those are things we'll see at the end of the season. I don't think we've ever sat here and worried about end results. We're worried more about the moment and how do we do a great job in that moment. Basically taking it day by day, win by win, moment by moment, training session by training session, meeting by meeting. He said, I think that's what Saturday becomes, is November football, right? We've always built this program to be its best in November, and that's that's the next part of our football team coming forward. I want to push back on that. This team is definitely not built to be the best in November, because we are missing half of it. I know that's a little harsh, but it's true. And I know that there's going to be an element of freak injury, but I'm going to sit here and just ask the same question I did in the first segment. How do we get here? I don't think that this team is built the best to be its best in November if you sustain that many injuries. But nonetheless, the idea that this team is focused on the moment, how can you do a great job in the moment, as opposed to any sort of end goal. Matt Campbell says this all the time, and it's kind of easy to say at the beginning of the season, like, oh, that's like total coach speak. There's obviously hopes and aspirations of making a Big 12 title game, hopes and aspirations of making the college football playoff. And when you hear him say that, it's like, well, that's just, he's got to say that. What does he expect? What do you expect him to say? We're going to go and win the national championship this year? Like, that'd be a pretty lofty goal. And since Iowa State hasn't done really anything like that, there's a high chance that backfires on you. And how do you respond to those kind of questions down the line? Now I think he's actually telling the truth. I really do think that Matt Campbell, the rest of this coaching staff, all of these players are genuinely just trying to take, capture the moment in front of them and make the most of it. I think they are genuinely just focused on getting better every single day, whether that's in the recovery room, actually getting physically better, or getting more, better in a way that could be perceived as, level of knowledge in the game, actual play on the field, how they practice, how they approach every day, those kinds of things. And I'm not going to sit here and tell Matt Campbell how to do his job. I'm not going to do anything like that. But I do think that there is an element to this program, this team, this organization, if you will. If they can just get back on track on some level, get better every day, really focus on the small things, they can realign this ship for next season. Because it's not like we're just focused on next season now. This one's completely over. But there is an element of, like, you don't want this to happen twice, right? And you obviously want to impress potential recruits, potential transfer portal targets, all of that kind of stuff, donors as well. That's kind of not the goal, but certainly a major part of where this team is at right now. And I don't hate that. I don't hate the idea of, like, you obviously can't get down because you're not in the Big 12 championship game, because that's just not. It's not a hope anymore. You would need such a ridiculous amount of help that it's no longer really in the cards, which is unfortunate. But there's always next season, right? That's how it works. There's no sense in feeling down because Iowa State didn't accomplish their goals, or at least those goals, right? And that's actually a good point, is what goals did Iowa State set prior to the season? Well, according to Matt Campbell, there wasn't really ever a goal for this team. There was just kind of like, get better every single day. Well, I mean, it's hard to really gauge that. That's kind of the point of the way that this is set up. The way that Matt Campbell runs this program is you're of course going to feel down when you don't achieve the impossible, when you don't achieve this grand goal or result or whatever. Even if you didn't specifically set it as a goal, it's kind of the end of the road. That's kind of like the biggest achievement that you can achieve. Of course, you're going to want that. So there's going to be an element, of course, you're going to feel down, but that wasn't what you were completely locking your sights in on. Now it doesn't feel like, well, there's no reason to play anymore. well, since we're not going to get to the championship, this season's over. Let's look forward to next season. That's not what's happening here. Matt Campbell has arranged this in a way to continue focusing just on the moment in front of you. Get better today. Be better at this 1% today. Get 1% better over time. Build something, create this momentum, whatever. So that now, when Iowa State is a 3-loss team in the Big 12, it's probably over. You're going to play some tough teams. It's not like everyone's just going to roll over for you. Oh, you've seen a lot of injuries? All right, we'll take the L. Whatever. We're not going to play hard. That's not going to happen. So you can't count yourself out of these games because that's almost like asking for problems. He's built it in a way where they can still come into work, still have something to work towards, still have something to fight for, which is, arguably one of the greatest things that a coach can instill into a team. When the season it feels like it's lost, if the team is still fighting hard, that is a difficult thing to get a team to do. That is a difficult thing to instill into young men. And that's one of the things that makes Matt Campbell so great is outside of just football, how he's been able to build these men into that kind of mentality. So in life, this is all in theory at this point, but in life, when something doesn't go their way, something that their end goal doesn't necessarily go their way, they can remember, well, it's not necessarily always about the end goal. Like maybe I set that goal, but it wasn't really about that. It's about setting daily habits, daily process, getting better 1% every single day. That's where the mindset is at. And that's where the carryover exists from football into real life. And that's what Matt Campbell's trying to do. So it is for us. It's very disappointing. You don't make the Big 12 championship game. What's the point now? What's the goal? We were there last season. We got 10 wins last season. There was a ton of hype around this team. Is he quitting on the team because he doesn't care? Like what's his goal? Yeah, I hear you. I feel the same way. That loss to BYU hurt. Obviously, the 2 losses before hurt pretty bad too, but the loss to BYU hurt a lot because now it's like over. You're effectively out of the Big 12 hunt. But that doesn't mean that the world ends. That doesn't mean that the program stops existing. Matt Campbell has to keep building these boys into men, which is an odd term. I understand that, but on some level, that's what's happening here. And Matt Campbell's done a very good job of keeping the main thing. And for some programs, the main thing is to go win a national championship. And for some teams, programs, the main thing is to develop real, legitimate, good people and men. And that's what Matt Campbell's doing. He's doing that for sure. Now, he's obviously got secondary aspirations of, he's done this twice, essentially, turned this program around and made them a very competent, legitimate contender. So he's obviously, that's one of the main things he's worried about as well. But I think at the end of the day, if you asked him, the main thing that he was worried about is not on the football field. And that's why it comes across the way that it does. It might be disappointing to us, but that's not really the main thing for Iowa State. If you asked me, and I guess I'm speaking a little bit for Matt Campbell by saying if you asked him, he'd probably say that. I understand that. But I think I'm, based on his answers, I say I'm pretty accurate on that. That being said, that's going to do it for today's episode. If you made it this far, you're a real one. Shout out to you. Yeah, can't wait. Tomorrow's going to be a special episode. Come back for that. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.